Alright guys, in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 mistakes I've made as a comic book collector. Let's go. What's up everyone? My name is Steve from Burke Family 54 Comics, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 mistakes I've made as a comic book collector. Before we do that though, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell, all of that. So I've compiled a list of 5 things that I messed up or I made a mistake on here as I've been a comic book collector here for about 5.5, maybe even 6 years now. So let's go and kick things off. The very first thing on the list is I think what everyone has made a mistake on when I first got into comics. That is not pressing your comics. I remember having books and not even knowing what pressing was, or thinking, I'm not going to spend $15 to get a book pressed before I send it to CGC. And honestly, for the longest time, I didn't even have any books that I sent to CGC. I think at one time I had 7 slabs, and then I sold them all and I had 0 again. And I definitely don't have 0 anymore. But I remember when I was thinking about sending some books to CGC, someone suggested to me to get them pressed because it could help on their grade. And I'm like, I think they're good enough as it is. And one of the books I sent in was a Batman 497, and I thought it looked good enough. And I sent it in, and it came back at 9.6, and I was kind of mad. And then I looked at the book and saw it had a couple non-color breaking creases that definitely could have came out with a proper press. So yeah, that is definitely one of the biggest mistakes I made. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes all comic book collectors have made when I first started collecting comics. And again, that is not pressing your comics. I definitely suggest doing that. I definitely suggest using my presser, comicbook_pressing, and IG, and use my promo code BURK54 to get free shipping back to you on your first order. Today's video is brought to you by comicbook_pressing on Instagram. Make sure you guys protect your investment by getting it pressed again with Eric over at comicbook_pressing on Instagram. The second thing that I made a mistake on when I first started collecting comic books was honestly not having enough knowledge of stuff and thinking I could get some books signed and send it to CGC and they're going to verify it. Definitely cannot do that. I remember getting some books signed at Planet Comic Con, and I think in 2019. I got some Freddie E. Williams books signed with the Batman TMNT series. I got some Power Ranger books signed by Jason David Frank, and a few other books as well. And I thought I could just, I get them signed. Yeah, you can look at the signature. That's good enough, right? I send it to CGC. No, you cannot do that. Obviously, CBCS offers that service where you can do the verified signature, and they can authenticate it for you. But at the time, I didn't even know what I was thinking. I was just thinking, man, I want to get these books signed. I want to get them graded, and they'll look good on my wall. Well, CGC quickly told me that you cannot. We have to be there to verify that. So that is definitely a lesson learned from the very first con I went to. And so my suggestion would be to obviously go get a CGC person or CBCS to verify it by being with you and witnessing the signature, so you can get that yellow label that we all crave outside of the blue label, of course. So yeah, so that again, the second thing that I made a big mistake on was getting books signed and thinking later I could send it into CGC and get them to verify it. You definitely cannot do that. You can do it with CBCS, and I definitely suggest using them if that is something you're wanting to do. But again, if you're wanting to do it with CGC, you cannot do that. So that was a mistake that I learned from very, very quickly. The third thing on my list of mistakes that I've made since I started collecting comic books, I think I started collecting comics in January of 2016, was waiting too long to buy a big book. Well, obviously, we can all say that at some point, we should have bought this book, should have bought that book. The price was X amount, and now it's Z amount, or whatever it is, right? And I remember talking to my brother-in-law, and one of the books I was looking at was a TMNT #1 third printing. And it's still one of the books that I'm hunting for right now. And I'll make another video on books I'm hunting for. But I was looking for one, and he's like, why don't you have a first appearance of Ninja Turtles? I thought you were a Ninja Turtle fan. And I'm like, I am. So I went on eBay and I looked for one, and I put it on a watch, and it was a near mint copy, right? It's a third print. I'm still perfectly fine with the third printing. And days go by, and eventually I get my notification that it's the last 15 minutes. and it's at like $200 or something like that. I'm like, oh, that is way too much money for a near mint copy of a third printing of TMNT #1. I think it sold for like $225 plus shipping, and I'm like, oh, no, that's that. And at the time, honestly, it was probably right around where it should have been, maybe even a little less. I can't remember exactly, but I definitely should have bought that book, because near mint copies of that book, like, let's say it's a 9.8, which it wouldn't have been, but let's say it was a 9.8. 9.8 books, TMNT #1 third prints are like $5,000 now. So definitely should have bought that book when I had the chance. A couple other books. I remember passing up a 9.4 ASM 300 for like $450. It was CGC 9.4, and I thought it was too much money. Now that book is like $1,400, $1,300 and a 9.4. So definitely, there's one of the mistakes I made is waiting too long to buy some big books. And another part of that was, for the longest time, for the first couple of years, I was only buying like filler books. I wasn't buying like any big books. I was just trying to collect just comic books. I wasn't really into keys that much. I remember spending like $20. Like $20 was my first big purchase, and I was like, man, I spent a lot of money on that book. $20 nowadays to me is not that much for a comic book, but I remember back in the day thinking that was a lot. So again, the third mistake that I've made was waiting too long to buy a comic book, whether it's getting it before the book spikes or just buying other stuff instead of big books. So the fourth thing on my top 5 list of mistakes I've made as a comic book collector, this was actually a very, very recent mistake that I made. I've been collecting, like I said, for about 5.5 years now. And I bought a Detective Comics 359. And I bought it at a con. And I remember asking to look at it. And it looked good on the outside, about 2.0 to 3.0, somewhere in there. And asked to see the inside. And I was only shown the first page. I didn't look at the back and look at the middle. None of that. Bought the book. And what happened was, within a day or two, I brought it home and I opened it up, and a page was cut up. It was missing pages, and yeah, thankfully the seller at the con that I bought it from was able to refund me the money, and I actually ended up using that money plus selling some stuff to get a graded copy right there. I'll try to throw up a photo on a screen right now. I got a 5.0 copy now. But the mistake I made was not checking the entire comic book, and that was not the first time that I've done that. I bought a New Mutants 98 a couple years ago. Looked at the front, looked like a 9.4-ish. And I bought it for a certain amount of money, and I thought it looked great, right? I did not check the back. The back had several color-breaking spine ticks, and I remember not being very happy with that. Not being very happy with myself that I didn't check the entire comic book. I did read that book, so I did check out the entire inside. But like I said, one of the biggest mistakes I made was not checking the entire comic book before purchasing it. You don't really have to do that for all comic books, I'd say. But if it's like an older comic book, whether it's bronze, silver, golden, whatever it is, I definitely suggest checking out the entire comic book. Especially if you're spending several $100s on a book, definitely check out the entire comic book before purchasing it, because you never know what could be in there, what could not be in there. So that was a mistake that I've now learned from after several times of messing up. Yeah, again, so number 4 on my list was not checking the entire comic book before buying it. And the 5th mistake that I've made on my top 5 list of mistakes I've made since I started collecting comic books was not waiting too long to join the comic book community. So what I mean by that is I started collecting comic books in January of 2016. And for the first 2.5 years, I kind of I tried to hide that I was collecting comic books. I don't know if I was, I'm sure I was ashamed of it. Like, I didn't know anyone else that collected comic books in town. I don't know anybody, I didn't know anyone online at the time. And I just wish I would have joined the community way sooner, because 2.5 years later, I did start an Instagram where I started sharing, my weekly haul for New Comic Book Day and other things, other books that I bought and all of that. And I saw a great response to it. I found other people that liked the same stuff as me, obviously. And that made me, over time, decide to start a YouTube channel, which I now, if you're watching this, you're now part of the YouTube channel community. I just wish I would have started the YouTube channel and Instagram as soon as I started collecting comic books and January of 2016, because I don't know where I'd be at, but I feel like it'd definitely be higher than I am now, and I'd have more friends and know a lot more people, and have just be like the community would be even bigger to me than it already is. And so I just wish I wouldn't have waited so long to join a comic book community, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or any other clubs or whatever it is. I wish I wouldn't have waited so long, because for like the longest time I didn't talk to anyone about it. I was kind of ashamed that I did it. Not really ashamed, but like, I don't know. I didn't talk about it as much as I do now. Definitely. And I feel like I would have been able to make more friends and find out more information and learn other tricks. I probably wouldn't have made all these mistakes that I made on this video if I would have started talking to more people sooner rather than later. So that is my list of top 5 mistakes I've made as a comic book collector. Let me know in the comments section what you guys think of my mistakes. I'm sure you made some of the same ones. If you have, which mistakes have you made? What other mistakes have you made? All of that and more. Again, my name is Steve from Burke Family 54 Comics. Thanks everyone for watching. And as always, go Cats, Cowabunga, and it's Morphin time.